Tantor Audio, a division of Recorded Books, presents The Innocent Killer, a true story of a wrongful conviction and its astonishing aftermath, by Michael Griesbach, narrated by Johnny Heller. Introduction. I've been a prosecutor for 25 years, and I thought I'd seen it all. I've been called out to crime scenes in the middle of the night to view victims of gunshot or stab wounds lying mangled in pools of congealing blood. I've comforted overwrought rape victims, paralyzed by fear, so they could muster the courage to take the stand. I've interviewed victims of armed robberies who stared death in the eyes and knew they were lucky to still be alive. And one time, I even saw tough guy cops with tears in their eyes and fear on their faces as they scrambled into the night to find the two young hoodlums who had shot and killed one of their own. I've sat almost comatose through thousands of hours of mindless intake court, listening to the pleas of defendants, "Not guilty, Your Honor," ceremoniously uttered over and over. I've seen my share of pompous prosecutors, join battle with belligerent defense attorneys, and paced courthouse hallways late at night, sweating it out while waiting for a verdict. But none of that prepared me for the case you are about to hear. A true crime story where the good guys are sometimes the bad guys, and the bad guys the good. It's a case of violent crime with a mind-numbing twist, but mostly it's a case about innocence and guilt. Prologue. Nature's beauty comes not from the spectacular in east-central Wisconsin. There are no 1,000-foot vertical drop cliffs like at Yosemite, or million cubic feet per second waterfalls like at Niagara. No, the land here owes its beauty to its moderation instead, its balance, its order. In between the extremes of the monolithic vistas of the Great Plains on one hand, and the confining woods of New England on the other, and with rolling farmland sharing the landscape with woods and lakes and streams, the land here seems just right somehow. But our climate is anything but moderate, and is a constant reminder that we are under the governance of a higher and occasionally darker power. Fair and even-tempered one moment, it can turn cruel and contemptuous the next, injudiciously wielding its malevolence with perfect indifference to the human suffering it leaves in its wake, like some almighty but uncaring pagan god. Most meteorologists say it's a myth, but some claim Lake Michigan protects east-central Wisconsin from the deadliest of summer storms. The Great Lake's frigid water cools the atmosphere, they say, and robs the beastly storms of the warm, moist air they feed on for their strength. Perhaps there's something to it. But twice in the not-so-distant past, the darker side of Mother Nature ignored Lake Michigan and brewed up storms so powerful that they shattered the balance of the atmosphere and laid waste to parts of the land. This book, in a manner of speaking, is the story of those two storms. The first storm shattered the glass on the courthouse dome, and the second one nearly left the local justice system in ruins. Part 1. 1. July 14, 1985. It was impossible to identify the man in her room. With the exception of her one-piece bathing suit, which had been hanging on the clothesline, but was now wrapped around his head, the intruder was nude. The 17-year-old girl thought for a moment she was dreaming, but the knife the man held to her throat was real. This wasn't a dream. "Say anything and I'll kill you," said the man, sitting on top of her with one hand over her mouth and the other on her breast. "Take off your clothes," he demanded. "Take off your clothes or I'll kill you." The girl, whose parents were up north for the weekend, pointed to the heating pad underneath her and blurted out she was having her period. The man felt the heating pad and then placed the girl's hand on his penis as she squirmed in disgust. Then he yanked her off the bed, and with the knife to her throat again, he took her by the arm and pushed her to the back door. "Call anyone and I'll come back and kill you," the man said, as he ran into the darkness, leaving as he entered, nude. For the police, determining the point of entry proved easy. The intruder had dragged a picnic table underneath the kitchen window, popped open the flimsy screen, and let himself in. They had a suspect in mind, but it was too dark for the girl to get a good look at the man. He was around 5 feet 8 inches tall, with a solid build, possibly a beard, but that's all she knew. So the investigation led nowhere. There was a predator on the loose, and the police knew he'd strike again. The only question was when. 2 weeks later. It was the middle of the summer, and like most afternoons over the past few weeks, Tom and Penny Burnson went to the beach. The Burnsons made their home in Manitowoc, Wisconsin, a city of 38,000 on the western shore of Lake Michigan, 70 miles north of Milwaukee and 30 miles south of Green Bay, a stone's throw from the hallowed grounds of Lambeau Field. The citizens of Manitowoc, whose moods rise and fall with the fortunes of their beloved Packers, are proud to be called cheeseheads. The couple owned and operated Burnson's Confectionery on North 8th Street, in the heart of Manitowoc's historic downtown. To step into Burnson's is to step into the past. Tom's grandparents opened the old-fashioned candy store and ice cream parlor in 1932, and Tom and Penny were its current caretakers. With homemade chocolates and candies artfully displayed behind glass-paned counters and elegant black walnut booths gracing the parlor, Burnson's Confectionery is one of Manitowoc's jewels. Tom and Penny both grew up in Manitowoc. They met in 7th grade and began dating during their sophomore year in high school. Together they attended a small liberal arts school in Downers Grove, Illinois, and were married during their 3rd year there. They graduated in 1971, Tom with a Bachelor of Science in Applied Behavioral Science and Penny with a Bachelor of Arts in Sociology. They spent the first dozen years of their marriage moving from one state to the next, from Illinois to Iowa, then to South Dakota, and later to Minnesota, as Tom accepted various positions at regional YMCAs throughout the Midwest, eventually attaining the position of CEO. Penny gave birth to their 2 children during this time, a daughter and then a son. She was also a physical fitness instructor, and somehow managed to find the time to work part-time as a staff member at a mental health center when they were living in Illinois. Having been on the move for more than a decade and longing for a more permanent place to call home, they moved back to Manitowoc in 1983 to run Tom's parents' candy store. Now it was 2 years later, and as usual, it took a long time for summer to arrive that year on the lakeshore, as the local television and radio personalities call East Central Wisconsin, even if nobody else does. And as usual, Lake Michigan was the culprit. For months, forecasters had qualified their predictions of a warm-up with the worn-out phrase, "cooler near the lake," and the patience of local residents wore thin. But the switch flipped in mid-June, and the prevailing northeasterly winds mercifully ceased. With summer now in full swing, the Burnsons frequently spent late afternoons on the beach at Neshota Park, a 12-minute drive from Manitowoc just north of Two Rivers. In addition to raising the kids and running the confectionery with Tom, Penny was a physical fitness instructor at the YMCA, and now that her summer fitness class was underway, she exercised religiously. A 6-mile run, often along the Lake Michigan shoreline, anchored her daily routine. That Monday was a perfect day for the beach, and with their 11-year-old daughter and 10-year-old son, Tom and Penny planned to take full advantage of it. Tom pulled their Dodge Caravan into the parking lot and grabbed the cooler, while Penny scoped out the beach for a place to set up camp. With sunshine and a mild breeze off the lake, the quarter-mile stretch of beach was packed with sunbathers. But Penny found a spot at the edge of the sand and popped open an oversized umbrella to protect them from the sun. She read a few pages from the novel she'd been working on since school let out, while Tom kept an eye on the kids, who splashed around in the 55-degree water. Penny would testify months later that it was precisely 3 o'clock in the afternoon when she removed her red and white striped T-shirt and got ready for her run. She knew it was 3 because a few days earlier she'd struggled against a strong headwind, and Tom and the kids were worried.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?